Here we are. I'll introduce ourselves in just a second. But first, Paul, I'm going to give you a heads up. I want you thinking, while I do introductions, think about anything you remember about the spring of 2002. Okay? So, Paul, I'm giving you that assignment. Welcome to 28 Minutes of Sanity. This is a podcast of a certain length and certain content. You can maybe guess from the title. This is my good friend Paul. I'm JJ. We want to hear back from you as you listen, as you have questions, comments, even disagreements. Send us a note, 28 minutes of sanity at gmail.com. We also have a Twitter account, which is really exciting, at 28min of sanity. So it's the number 28, min, short for minute, 28min of sanity is our Twitter handle. So come find us. We're glad you're listening. We're glad you're watching. We'd like to hear from you. Paul, what do you remember about the spring of 2002?
I'm kind of still caught on the whole Twitter thing of how many followers we had, because there was a whole lot of Pauls on there.
That's what this podcast is following. We're following a bunch of Paul buyers.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't use Twitter, so.
Okay. Well, it's time to crank it up, dude. Welcome to 2008.
You were asking about how am I supposed to remember what happened back then? I don't remember what happened a minute ago.
Okay. Well, it's easier for me to remember that far back. How old were you? Spring of 2002.
78. What's the math on that?
When's your birthday?
78, August.
August of 78. Okay. So let's see, 22. You would have been like 23. You were about to turn 24. You're about to turn 24.
Does that sound all right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That's way too much math. But
does that help? So hopefully
help.
You're out of high school by then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I wasn't I?
Yeah. You're about to turn 24.
I'm getting old.
Were you married yet?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, so you're married.
I was married, but I think I do. You want me to guess off of your notes?
Just your own life. Like, what were you? Were you a truck driver then? A cop? What you've got?
Man, I don't remember.
You have a past. That's okay.
Don't ask me hard questions. Okay. I could, if I have a call, I could call my wife and ask her because she knows everything.
Okay.
So.
Well, if you're watching right now, and Paul, I asked you last night if you remember the smiley face bomber. Did you look this guy up?
I did. I remember him now that you said that. Well, I had to look him up, but I remember him.
So what do you, after you looked it up, what do you remember about this? The smiley face bomber happened. This is a real thing. I'm going mostly from memory. And so you might want to fact check us on this. This is, to the best of my recollection, I'm going to talk about this. But what do you, now that you kind of read a little bit, what memories did that trigger?
In me, I remember actually feeling scared. Like they didn't know where he was or anything, so I was scared to check my mailbox.
Okay.
I'm thinking, well, what could happen around here? You know, what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember it being big news. This is post-internet, but pre-Twitter. And there were a string of bombings in Illinois and Iowa, and it formed kind of a circle on the map. And
did anybody come to Nebraska? I thought there was some around here.
So then, I can't remember what time lapse there was, but then there was a string of bombings in Nebraska. I was living in Lincoln at the time. The closest one was in, I think, Raymond, which is just a little bit outside of Lincoln, real close to where some friends of mine lived out of town. And yeah, people were on edge. It was maybe our version of Starkweather.
Yeah, because that was the same guy, right? The same one was doing Nebraska also. That's
what we found out later. Yeah, nobody knew what was going on for a time. And then if you pull up a map today, there was the circle in Illinois and Iowa, and then there was the circle in Nebraska. Closest one to me was Raymond. I couldn't find a list of specifics, but it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in either Nebraska or northern Kansas. So you've got these two circles. And then there was a single bombing in southwest Colorado, and then a single bombing in the Texas Panhandle, like the Lubbock area. And so the nation, like, it's just one of those things that captured the nation. Like, what in the world is going on? This is within a year of 9/11. So, people were edgy about that kind of thing still. And you've got these bombings. Nobody died, but a few people were injured. And there's this sort of manhunt, like who is doing this? What is going on? And eventually they caught the guy. But in the season when they were still looking, and you've got a whole nation of detectives trying to figure out who, why, what is this? There was kind of an early version of Reddit or some kind of online discussion. And somebody out there went on the record and said, I think this is the beginning of a smiley face. You got circle, circle, and then, I'll draw a little map here.
Well, wasn't he actually trying to do that? Like it wasn't just somebody guessing that, it was actually his intent, but then he never finished it because he got caught. Right.
So I don't know if this shows up.
It's bright.
Is that going to show up very good? That is. All right.
I have to turn the exposure down.
This is our first live episode. But let me try and emphasize.
Use a marker.
String of bombing, single bombing, right? Okay, so you can kind of see that, better. Right? And so this is before he's caught, and you've got 100 million people speculating on what's going on, and somebody went on the record while they were still searching for him and said, "It looks like I would never be a good weatherman. I can't do this. Looks like the beginning of a smiley face," and that got ignored because everybody's talking about it, right? But then the guy got caught in all places, Reno, Nevada. So not where you would expect the next one to be right around Dallas. But he said, after he was caught, I was trying to make a smiley face. And then people looked back at all the online chatter and they found a couple people who had said, I think this is what it is.
So did he explain why he wasn't in the correct position when they caught him?
I think maybe he was fleeing at that time. I think they were starting to close in on him, and he had to choose, again, fact check us, but I think he chose fleeing rather than trying to get to the next target. And that's why they caught him out dedicated.
No, I'm glad he got caught. That's not good. I can't believe nobody got hurt worse.
You say that like if he was dedicated, that you'd be more impressed with him, but
no. I'm not impressed either way. I'm just being a smart aleck. I'm just glad nobody got hurt worse. Because I can't believe nobody died from that.
Right. So, but whoever figured it out was using a particular intuition that we have, where we have this tendency to look for patterns and to notice patterns. And somebody made kind of a wild guess, like, I think this is the beginning of a pattern. Like you would never say smiley face like after the initial. Here's the first string of bombings: Illinois, Iowa, and then the second string of bombings, mostly in Nebraska. And nobody would. But then when you start to see the beginning of maybe there's something going on there. It turns out that person was right. And the reason that I'm talking about this on this podcast is that I'd never thought about this before, but this is an illustration of a concept that I want to talk about for a bit today called intelligent design. You familiar with the phrase, Paul?
It sounds familiar, but okay. What do you think the definition is?
Well, what do I think that's what we're going to talk about, because intelligent design has it's controversial because it is connected to critiques of evolution, critiques of Darwinism. It's connected to creationist thought and ideology. And so but what I want to take a good share of the pod today is just kind of explaining what it is. And so I want to we're going to move on from the smiley face bomber. And hopefully when you look back, you'll kind of see how I got where I got with that. But I'm going to do a little different illustration with you. And I should have brought legitimate props here, but you're going to have to use your imagination, okay?
There's a reason I asked you that, by the way.
Ask me
what your definition is, because
okay.
I remember back in youth group when I was helping out and you would talk about my truth and your truth and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't believe, like, what are you even talking about? There's only one truth.
Okay.
But now I see it everywhere. Like
it's
just
a world
in society.
Right.
So unfortunately, it's a topic you got to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's in this sequence of podcasts, we are going to cover that as well. And they're all, in a sense, they're all the topics that we hit are all going to be connected in some way. So great question, but let me work my way around to what this is, and some light bulbs I think are going to start to come on. But imagine that I've got a bucket or a bag with 10 ping pong balls in it, okay? And they each have a number on them, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? They're all identical. I can't see in there, all right? So I reach in and I pull out an 8, okay? What is your reaction?
I wish I played the lottery and picked 8.
Okay, maybe so, yeah.
Like, or guess what kind of reaction are you thinking?
Well, would you be amazed if I pulled an 8 out?
I'd be amazed if you called it was an 8 and then pulled it out.
Okay, but I didn't. I didn't make a prediction ahead of time. Okay.
Yeah.
I just randomly pulled out an 8.
Yeah.
Okay?
So who cares?
No big deal, right?
Yeah,
you might think, for example, my birthday's in August. You already said yours is.
Yeah.
Somebody say, hey, that's my birthday. But you wouldn't be like in awe of, whoa, what are the odds he pulled out my birthday? Because any ping pong ball that I pull out of there, you could associate with something, right?
Yep.
If I pulled out a 3, maybe that was your football number in high school. If I pulled out a 7, maybe you live on 7th Street, whatever. Anything that I pull out, you could say, well, that's connected to something, but that is no big deal, right?
Yeah, so I noticed. Well, never mind. I'm not going to go off on a rabbit trail.
I appreciate it. So I throw the 8 back in. I replace it. So they're all back in there. And now I pull out a 6. So now we have a sequence of an 8 and a 6, right? And is anything special happen yet?
No.
Are you amazed by anything?
No, unless you predicted it.
And if I predicted it, then that would be, if I said, so let's say that happened. Say that I said at the start of this thing, let's say I say, Paul, I'm about to pull out an 8. And then I reach in there, I pull out an 8. What do you conclude?
If the first one, I'd say you're lucky. But if you predicted the second one, I'd be like, no way.
Okay.
That's a little different.
Okay, yeah. And this is what we're getting at with intelligent design. And we're going to have to keep going to really get at the concepts. But if
don't expect an intelligent answer from me.
Come on. You're going to be okay. But you know more than you think you know here.
Yeah.
But if I say I'm pulling out an 8 and then I do, there's 2 possibilities, right? 2 possible things just happened. Because what were the chances that I'm going to pull out an 8?
Pretty low. Well, how many are there?
There's 10 ping pong balls
10,
in there.
So 1 of 10.
1 out of 10,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
So what are the 2 possible explanations for what just happened?
You either got lucky or you cheated.
Right. Somehow there's like a little blemish on the 8 and I found it. I said I'm going to pull out an 8 so either I cheated, either I kind of planned it in advance, or else I got a little lucky, right? But it's not like amazing. Yep. Like 1 in 10 things happen all the time, right?
Yep.
Like that wouldn't be so, you wouldn't like fall over dead. Like I cannot believe,
No.
That could happen, right?
I probably assume
I could be just goofing around.
Yeah, I assume you either got lucky or you're just messing around.
Okay. Both are pretty reasonable inferences, right?
Yep.
I could have just been lucky because 1 in 10 is not that lucky. It's pretty common for 1 in 10 events to happen. So, for example, if there's a 10% chance of rain and then it rains, you're not shocked, right?
No,
you're not like, my goodness, I cannot. You're
well,
like,
it depends. if the weatherman
quit messing with my
up.
illustrations. It's unlikely, but not amazing. Okay, so I throw the 8 back in, and then I say I'm about to pull out a 6, and then I reach in, I pull out a 6. Now, the chances of that whole sequence happening were 1 in 100, right?
Yeah,
because it was 1 in 10
now you really
on top of 1 in 10.
Yeah, now you really are cheating.
So now you're more sure that I'm cheating now.
Yeah,
right. Before you're like, it could be either. Maybe that was dumb luck. Maybe he cheated, right?
Yep.
If I do the 8 and the 6, the likelihood of that being dumb luck shrunk from 10% to 1%, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the likelihood
that
I cheated just went from 90% to 99%, right?
Yep.
Okay. So So get that fixed in your mind. There's two possibilities. Either I'm lucky or I rigged it, right? Okay.
I'm going to go with you rigged it.
Okay. You know me. And we're going to leave aside for a moment that I think luck is a bad word because we believe in the sovereignty of God. We're using luck the way normal people use the word luck, right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's set aside, which ordinarily I wouldn't do, but set aside the sovereignty of God. Okay, so now, Paul, don't comment. I'm going to give you the full sequence, okay?
You can't tell me not to comment.
I'll tell you when you can. Hey, I will.
I'm sorry.
I will tell you when
I'll
you
try
can
to
talk.
stop.
All right. No. So I'm not making I'm not making predictions this sequence, okay? I'm just going to pull out ping pong balls and we're going to record. I'm going to tell you, again, it's imaginary. We're going to record the outcome, okay? And so I pull one out. It's an 8, all right? So I write down an 8. I throw it back in, swirl them around, pull out a 6. I'm writing that down, throw it back in, swirl them around, pull another one out. It's a 7. Okay. Throw it back in, swirl them around. It's I'm going to make 5. Okay. Throw it back in, swirl them, pull it back out. Next one is a 3. Next one is a 0. Next one is a 9. Okay. So you imagine you just watched all that. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I didn't talk to you ahead of time, but what does that ring a bell? That sequence?
It does.
Okay.
I'm not going to sing it.
I'm not going to ask you to sing. Okay. But what is significant about that particular sequence?
I don't even remember. Is it like a zip code on a TV show or something?
It's a song from
like some sort of
the
song.
80s.
Yeah. 8675309.
Jenny something number 8675309.
Yeah,
right? It was some one-hit wonder
I know the
band.
song, but I don't remember why or what it was for.
Right. Okay. So it was a pop song. So now, we talked earlier about pulling out the 8 or pulling out the 8 and the 6. If you saw that play out, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9, a series of ping pong balls. And we already talked about the first one. If I was predicting it, there's a 10% chance of luck, 90% chance I'm cheating. If I predict 8 and 6, it's 1%. So what do you know about what you just witnessed?
I know you definitely cheated.
Right. This was pre-planned.
Possible.
There is simply no way that I could pull out a sequence like that. Okay?
Even though I could, but there's no way you could do it also.
You have some godlike powers that I don't have. Okay? But what I just described, and maybe if you're like an avid watcher, listener of this podcast, if you want to create like a little skit, make a little drama of that's more interesting than just listening to us talk, you sure can. But this is an illustration of something called specified complexity, okay? So that's two concepts, right? Specified means that it matches a predetermined target, okay? It matched the target 8675309, which is a phone number from a song from the 80s, right?
Yep.
Okay. But it's also complex because how many balls did I pull out?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Was that 8 numbers?
7.
I can't
7.
count.
Okay. So in other words, the odds of that sequence are 1 in 10 to the 7th, right?
Yeah, now you're hurting my head with all that math again.
So it's 1 in 10 million that I would pull out that sequence. Okay? But that's not amazing because the odds of any sequence are if 7 ping pong balls, the odds of any sequence are 1 in 10 million. 1 in 10 to the 7th. But only out of the 10 million possibilities, only a few of them have meaning. Only a few of them are a predetermined target, okay? For example, 8675309 means something, right?
Yep.
My cell number means something. If I pulled out this, I'm not going to show it. I hope it's not.
It's not.
It's not going on YouTube, okay? If I pulled out this sequence, it's rigged, right?
Yep.
There's only, of all the combinations, they're all equally unlikely, but only a few of them have real meaning to you or to me.
Yep.
Okay. Now, this illustration isn't perfect because probably whatever sequence you pulled out, somebody in America has that phone number.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, like the illustration breaks down a little bit because it is going to match because there are 10 million phone numbers in America. So if you pull out 7 ping pong balls, you're going to match that. Okay. But the point of that is we use this concept of specified complexity to distinguish when we notice things, to distinguish between events that are just random and events that are designed. Okay? Like you could do the same thing with Scrabble tiles, right? Like if I reach into a bag of Scrabble tiles and I pull out a P, you're like, that's my first letter of my name, but big deal, right?
Yep.
And if I pull out an A, you're like, well, that's a word, paw. First 2 letters, that's interesting. If I keep going, a U, you're like, a little more interesting, but not huge. But if I keep at some point, your intuitions trigger and you're like, he's cheating. We now know this is no longer random.
Oh, yeah.
And what we're doing today is just introducing the concept of intelligent design. All right. Now, intelligent design has been applied to the creation evolution debate. And I had you look up earlier, like some challenges to intelligent design. We might not get to it today, but this is the basic concept behind what is known as the intelligent design movement. All right. So in our culture, there is this debate between, this is not a complete description, but in general, you have one idea that says that everything came about randomly by chance. All of reality, all of life, including humanity, just molecules clicking together, eventually produce single-celled organisms. Those organisms reproduce. Those organisms occasionally we get a mutation that's more complex. Given enough time, we can get to humanity. That is, an evolutionist would say that's too simple, of course. That's a simplified description of the theory of evolution, okay? A creationist says, no, these things that we see, whether it's the human body, whether it's a stalk of corn, whether it's a bald eagle, whatever it is, those things did not arise by chance. They were specially created. Now, within those views, there's a spectrum.
I think the hard part too is, there are people that complain that, well, of course, everything fell into place just like you say it can't because you had enough time. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of evolution. It's just time. Mm-hmm. Eventually, it'll get there.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And so you have this sort of impasse in a way. You've got and again, I understand, there are naturalistic evolutionists who are essentially, they're either true atheists or they believe in God, but they would say that God really had nothing to do with the whole process, sort of like a deist almost. And then it's pretty common. You have theistic evolutionists. There are a fair number of genuine Christians who are theistic evolutionists, who they believe in God. They believe that this process of evolution took place, but God guided it. Okay. And then a little further over, you have different kinds of creationists who would say, no, we didn't arise from lower life forms. We were specially created. Kind of the two big camps there are old earth creationists, who would say that they would say the days of Genesis are not hyper-literal 24-hour days. And then you would have some who say that they are, okay? And I'm not, for the sake of this podcast, I'm not going to dive into those distinctions. Those are important, but they're not the main thing. But the main thing is that you have roughly 2 views. You've got the creationist view that we were designed fully formed. You have the evolutionist view that we arose from lower life forms. And so as in introducing the intelligent design concept, what I'm saying is there's a group of scientists who've kind of stepped into this and said, look, there's actually a way mathematically to conclude design, okay? And they take the very concepts we just talked about, okay? Whether it's the smiley face bomber, who the further he had gotten, if he had kept going, more and more people would have said, oh my goodness, this is a smiley face. This matches a predetermined pattern, and their intuitions would have surfaced that these bombings are not happening in random places. This guy's drawing a picture.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Or the more ping pong balls I pull out, the more they match a common, say that you have like a 28 key password, okay? And I pull out one or two and they match the first two numbers of your password. You're not spooked yet, right?
No.
But if I get to 7, 8, 9, 15 and they match your password, you're like, this is not luck. This is real. And that same intuition, the intelligent design community, which is made up of theistic evolutionists, some, not many are in this camp. Some theistic evolutionists, not very many. Some old Earth creationists, some young Earth creationists saying, let's use math and logic and philosophy to look at things like the DNA sequence that we have in our cells. And they'll take that DNA sequence that we've recently in the last few years been able to look at completely, okay? And they'll say that DNA sequence could be any sequence of millions of characters, right?
Yeah.
But most of them would not produce a living animal, okay? That sequence is actually a blueprint, right?
Oh yeah.
So, and there are actually 4. I haven't done my homework on this for a long time, but there are 4. There's A, T, C, and G. All right, 4 different letters or types within a DNA sequence, and there are millions and millions of those four possible strings. Okay, and most of the possible combinations that you produce will not produce a living thing, right? There are only a handful of possible combinations, and yet somehow we see in the world a working combination, all right?
So what you're saying is like just the DNA alone of a person is pretty much impossible to be random, not to mention the rest of the entire Earth and universe.
Yeah. Leave aside the universe itself. Leave aside the Earth. Okay, but the DNA that you have in your cells, and every single cell of your body exhibits this. It exhibits a blueprint to make Paul's body. Okay, and it is literally information. It is a design plan encoded in you. This is what one of the best thinkers on this, Stephen Meyer, wrote a book a few years ago called "Signature in the Cell," where am I holding that? Stephen Meyer.
Yep.
He kind of works all this out, and he explains how information, okay, just like 8675309 is information, right? Yeah. It's not just a random group of numbers.
Yeah.
It represents a famous song, okay? And information cannot arise by chance. One of the illustrations that he gives, and I actually got to see this a few years ago, but in Victoria, he's with the Discovery Institute in Seattle, and in Victoria, British Columbia, which is kind of across the bay from, it's a little boat ride up from Seattle, a short boat ride up from Port Angeles, Washington. And as you come into Victoria, British Columbia, they've got flowers spelling out like welcome to Victoria or something like that. Okay. And he illustrates, he's like, nobody would look at that grouping of flowers on the hillside and say, oh, those must be wildflowers that are growing randomly, because they spell out a word or a sequence of words with meaning.
Oh, yeah. There's no way that would even happen unless it was really weird and vague.
And so what the intelligent design community does is they say, look, we have a model. We have a way of looking at human DNA or looking at the natural world and finding instances of information or intelligence and information or intelligence necessarily arises from a mind. Okay, every situation we see, we intuit. We use this all the time without realizing it. They point to the fact this would fit your background. A crime scene, okay, or a possible crime scene. Some situations are it's questionable whether a thing was a crime or an accident, right?
Yeah.
You find a dead body. I didn't plan to get this gross here. You find a dead body, and some dead bodies get there on accident. An accident happened. This person died. But there are some sets of circumstances, like an extreme one would be someone is laying there with a knife in their back. Okay. As a police officer, if you come upon that, what do your intuitions tell you?
It's clearly an accident. No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
This has
I
gone
can't help it.
off
No,
the edge.
it was.
Oh my God! Just a second.
there was a chance
Pause.
it was
Pause
murder.
right there. I'm supposed to be watching the clock. We're at 31. So we have 3 or more bonus minutes of sanity. So we're going to start to land the plane a little bit here. We're doing this podcast just to introduce this concept. Want to hear from you guys because there's no way we can cover all the implications of this on this podcast. But let's just let it play out. Okay, so body, knife in back. Okay,
There's a
intuitions.
There's a chance it was murder.
Okay, how much of a chance?
I'd say maybe 90%, 99%. But
That's still pretty low, right?
You still got to prove it, yeah, or at least have the idea.
Well, okay, so that gets into more levels of intelligent design, right? You don't know who the perpetrator is yet, right?
No, definitely not.
Okay, so you can't say you need more information to discover the perpetrator, all right? What I'm just asking right now is how likely is it that you have stumbled upon a murder scene? Well north of 99%,
yeah,
right?
it's pretty likely.
It's very hard for that scenario to be an accident, okay? Because this set of circumstances we know doesn't arise randomly, okay? It's a little different. Okay, so you go to the edge of a ravine and you see a car down there, okay? Now, can you say that a crime happened?
No, you'd have to investigate it for sure to see if it was an accident or not.
From what you know right now, it's roughly 50-50, right?
Yeah.
It could very easily be an accident. It could very easily be a random event. Somebody's probably still dead, but it's not necessarily a crime.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's very possible that it's some kind of foul plays involved, right?
Oh yeah.
That scenario is 50-50. You're still using intelligent design in that situation. You're evaluating the likelihood of randomness versus the likelihood of a mind made this happen. Okay. Now, knife in back, it's no longer 50-50, right?
Yep.
It's now 99.9%
probably 0.9
likelihood or higher of foul play. Very, very slim chance that you have happened upon an accident, right?
Yep.
Okay. Because the arrangement of circumstances points to the actions of a mind. Okay, intelligent design does the same thing. It says, look, there are circumstances that we can point to as an accident. There are circumstances, however, that we know are the product of a mind. Now, like you said, one of the common critiques of intelligent design, and interestingly, this critique comes from both Christians and from secularists or evolutionists, is, well, we still don't know who the mind was, right? And that's kind of what you got at. You kind of said we don't know who the murderer is.
Yeah.
Right. But we can still know a murder happened without knowing yet who the perpetrator is, right?
Yeah, because isn't there still that, well, I don't remember his name, but there's some really, really smart, popular atheist that could prove everybody wrong, but he admitted that we were intelligent design. He just doesn't think there's a God. So like it was aliens or something that created us, not a God.
Like Richard Dawkins is
that
on,
who it was?
on record. He's
maybe that was him. I saw an interview on him once on TV or something.
Yeah, it was in Ben Stein's. I can't remember the name of that documentary, but he kind of got him pinned down, and Dawkins like, well, maybe it happened on crystals, or maybe, Yeah, and that you've triggered something in my mind, but it's called Panspermia, where there are a fair number of people who have said, well, aliens have seeded, seeded, seeded this planet with life, okay? And while I don't believe that one bit, they are implicitly acknowledging that intelligent design had merit. They're saying the aliens did it, okay?
Yeah, that's
so
what I
they're
understand.
again,
If you can think that an alien created this world, why couldn't God have created this world?
right. Well, yeah, that I mean, they're admitting they're trying to minimize the possibility of creation being the explanation, but at the same time, they're granting that the intelligent design concept has merit. They're like, oh, there must have been minds to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, so that is just rough coverage of intelligent design. Again, there's a lot of directions we can go with this. One thing that I plan to, in our class on this pod, to stay away from, for the most part, is the old Earth, young Earth debate. And I'll just be completely upfront. I am not sufficiently knowledgeable to try to split hairs there. What I would want, this is kind of an aside now as we wrap this thing up, but what I do want to do is get these people to not insult each other. The phenomenon that I have noticed is that old Earthers often will mock young Earthers as not being sufficiently aware of science or not being open to other interpretations of Scripture. And it goes both ways. I have seen young Earthers, and a lot of times these people aren't even talking to each other. They aren't even aware that each other exist because they run on such a track. But young Earthers will say, well, old Earthers aren't real Christians. That's a little extreme. But they'll say they clearly don't believe the Bible, and they're opening us up to all sorts of other problems with rejecting Scripture. And I simply don't see it. I wish these people would see that they can be allies. Yes, argue with each other. That argument is appropriate. But there's a fair bit of slander between these two camps. And I don't want to go there either in our class or on this podcast. It'd be fun to have a guest from each position on here sometime to debate that or to talk through the pros and cons of those views. Okay. But what I do want in our class on this podcast is to look at where these ideas are coming from, because the ideas taken to their logical conclusion have really significant consequences. As we record this, I don't know when this is going to go out. It might be a few weeks or months. So this might not be timely by then. But before we started recording, Paul, we were talking about the Supreme Court, right? And the Supreme Court is debating the Dobbs case, which is about the right to life of the unborn. Does the unborn have a fundamental right to life? Or put slightly differently, does the state have a right to protect the life of the unborn? And where you fall out on these issues of intelligent design versus randomness really does affect how you view these things. If you are specially created, there is something precious and unique about you that we have the right to protect. Whereas if you are simply an accident, there's no fundamental moral difference between abortion and non-abortion. It's just a different arrangement of cells. And so when we talk about something like intelligent design, it has real implications for life and for the world. So that's why we're going where we're going. If this just serves as an introduction to the concept to you, that's great. I want to give you a chance to throw in I'm going to wind it up here in just a second, but do you want to throw in on anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So I want you guys to, if you come to the class this weekend, that's great. I want you thinking about everything that we've talked about. Come with questions, come with thoughts for us. But if you don't come to the class, but you're interested in these ideas and you're watching as either someone with agreement with what we're talking about, but you have questions or comments, reach out to us. You can send us a note on Twitter at 28MIN of Sanity. That's short for 28 Minutes of Sanity, but it's the digits 28. Minutes is short. 28MIN of Sanity. Or you can send an email to us at 28, the digits, 28, 28minutesofsanity@gmail.com. This has been Paul. I'm JJ, and we love that you're listening. We love that you're watching, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks.